Well, I kind of plotted out this section in advance and wondered what might we all need at this moment in time while waiting for our intended, for our betrothed, while waiting for the data sets to pop up the perfect person, and came across these two wonderful ladies from MIT who have developed a haptic vest which will give you a hug anytime anybody likes you on your Facebook site. Aww. So Melissa Chow and Helena Slosar. I was on a mission and trying to get to the stage when I spotted you backstage, but welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Moses. Thank you for that introduction. We're so excited to be here to share with you some of the work that we've done together as MK&H. So MK&H is actually an art and design collaborative that focuses on enlivening spaces and encouraging new physical and social relationships to arise through public architecture. So I came to MK&H as an artist, an installation artist actually, that was working with landscape architects and also in the public realm.
And I'm Helena, and I'm trained as an architect, and my particular focus is actually in acoustics and the relationship between sound and space and how one can affect the perception of the other. So we actually met at Harvard Graduate School of Design, not MIT, and we instantly bonded over our shared interest in creating projects that toyed with perception and also the body and its relationship to the environment.
So I'm just going to jump right into our first project, which is Like a Hug. So Like a Hug was this vest that essentially hugs you when somebody likes your status or your photo on Facebook. And so this inflates and it gives you a hug. And this was actually developed at the MIT Media Lab with Andy Payne and Phil Seaton. And so what we were interested in was kind of exploring how these new haptic technologies can be integrated into our everyday lives. And so this actually came about in a conversation that we were having just casually about long-distance relationships and video chat capabilities and how it's been really limiting, actually, in kind of conveying these kind of emotive behaviors. And so we were really looking in a way to kind of figure out how to push past this tangible, graphical user interface into a more tangible user interface. What was really interesting was that when this went viral, a lot of people had really strong reactions to this. And some people were really interested in kind of bringing this into their everyday lives, but other people were almost like repulsed by this kind of, why would you get rid of a hug and replace it with a digital one? But it's really interesting how these kinds of haptic technologies are actually already being integrated into our everyday lives. And they're just seamlessly integrated, and we don't even recognize it. So what we're going to do right now is actually jump back to the core of our work as installation artists and what really inspires us in the world around us.
So spatial phenomena. What is spatial phenomena? This is basically a term that we've given to moments in time and in space that we see every day, and they basically revolve around the interaction between natural ephemeral phenomena and the built or constructed environment. And this can either be the urban environment or the more intimate interior spaces, but really they're grounded in specific moments in space and time. And what we hope to do with our work is to bring attention back to these particular moments and have people be more aware of their environment as they move through them during the day. So most of these photos are of light moments, but really we're also interested in doing this with sound as well. So there is a project that came out of an artist residency and became a year-long exhibition at the Contemporary Artist Center in Troy, New York. And it really started with my obsession with cones. Cones are fascinating to me because they have the quality both of projecting sound and also focusing it. And this is a property that's due to their geometry. And so what the idea was to create a wall of cones that would mediate between an interior and an exterior space. And the intervention created a space for eavesdropping, for projecting messages, for speaking confessions, and other unanticipated interactions between strangers. But it also re-engaged people with the existing architecture, and that's something that we're really interested in doing with our work. Oh, and I wanted to say this. A discovery that came up during this project was that when you put your ear up to the cone, little puffs of cool air kind of come out of the hole because of the temperature and pressure difference between the interior and exterior space. So you really start to tune yourself and focus to the quality of architecture, that it's not a static object, but really it's a living, breathing body.
Right, so another acoustical intervention that we did was suspended sound stair. The concept behind this piece was to create a gradient of sound absorption as you move up and down this stairwell through an accumulation of layers of fabric. So we were really interested in this particular stairwell because it was extremely reverberant, and it was also kind of a neglected space within this building. Like, no one really used this stairwell. So what we were interested in doing was going into the space, intervening into it, and manipulating the conditions that were existing in the space, and allowing that to then encourage people to re-engage with that space and become a little bit more attentive of it.
So as Melissa mentioned, the inherent quality of the space was that it was extremely reverberant. And this was due to its materiality. It was completely constructed out of concrete, so there was nothing in the space that would absorb the sound if there was any kind of impulse. So here's a clip just so you can get a sense of the space. So you can hear there's a several-second tail of reflections after the initial impulse. Another thing that added to that quality of kind of perpetual reflections is that there's a singular void that connects all of the landings in this stairwell. And that continuity really allowed the reflections and to kind of continue and never stop.
Right, and if you noticed, there is also a light shaft at the very top of this void, and so it really allowed for the light to filter in a beautiful way, and we wanted to use the fabric to kind of capture that and filter the light in beautifully. So what we did was we started working with several tests, and we were working with kind of figuring out how far apart to layer each layer of fabric, and so we consulted with acoustical engineers and talked to them about how we could create the optimal flow resistance to allow for this deadening and dampening of sound. We also tested it in the space and just started to work in scaling up.
Right, so one of the really important factors from this project was the structural the structure that supported it. And it was tricky because we weren't actually allowed to mechanically fasten into the space. So the structure had to be completely independent and temporary, but also robust enough to support hundreds of pounds of fabric. And for us to be able to install it ourselves, well, with a little help. So here we are with our laundry bags, testing the structure, confirming that in fact it is suitable and that we will be able to do the project. Right, so what we ended up designing was this three-point pivot structure so that it would actually be hoisted into place. And so what we really loved about this design was that it allowed for the installation to be completely kind of like integrated into the architecture and almost dissolve into the space. And here we are some photos
installing
of
the piece.
The fateful day when it was actually put in place.
And here the fabric is let down. And so now what we're going to do is play for you a sound comparison of the first floor, which only has one layer of fabric, and the fourth floor, which has 16 layers of fabric.
Oh man, it's not very loud. Okay, that was really subtle. So we're going to play it one more time. But you can try to listen to the length of time between the claps, because that's the actual tail of reflections that's happening. There we go. So again, in example, it's a little difficult to hear, but when it was really the most noticeable was when there was a large group of people in the stair moving down together. So at the top, people were having conversations, they were easily conversing with each other in a normal voice, and then as people were moving down the stair, the reflections increased, and so they had to talk louder and louder. And by the end, it was really a cacophonous mess, and we were so excited because we said, oh my gosh, this is it. This is exactly what we were hoping to do with the project.
So one of the other discoveries that we found along the way in working on the project was that each level of this stairwell was actually emitting a different color temperature. The light was emitting a different color temperature. So what we wanted to do was bring attention to that within the space. And so what we did was align the fabric with the shadows that this light was casting, and thereby we were able to kind of use this the fabric as a canvas to show events this color, this light color. So now we're going to loop back around to technology and how we've used it to integrate it into our art and try to activate spaces, but also encourage interaction with the environment. So remembered presence is a temporal light landscape that seeks to basically capture memory and presence through interaction. And so with handprints, footprints, body impressions, these are actually impressed onto this moldable surface, and then that's actually captured through light and form. And so this light actually dissipates at a different rate depending on how long you interact with this surface. And another layer of embedded communication and information that's sent out is actually in the color. So what happens is if you were to kind of just touch onto this surface for a split second, then it would glow yellow, and then that would dissipate immediately. But if you were to actually maybe sit on it for 30 seconds, what happens is then the color will change from yellow to green to blue to purple, and then would remain on purple. And when you get up from the piece, then that purple would actually dissipate over a period of several minutes. So in that way, you're actually able to gather kind of like presence and who's been there before and how they interacted through color and form.
Yeah, easy to draw, hard to make.
So you can see here we created this array of LEDs and pressure sensors that were then embedded underneath a substructure, and then we laid upon that this goo substance, which was essentially like a transparent viscous matter.
So one of the challenges for this project was working with digital inputs, but also really maintaining the tactile quality of the piece, because ultimately it was a physical experience that we were hoping to create. And here's the first merging of the two.
So materiality actually played a huge role in this piece, and we were really kind of searching for a material that would hold memory, but also return back to its original state. So what we did was we played with different kinds of material, memory foam, silicone, and what we ended up picking was this material that really allowed for this optimal level of memory, but also a beautiful kind of way of diffusing the light. So it actually had little bubbles inside of it that would actually allow for the light to kind of reflect off of the material itself. And here is Yuichiro, who worked with us on a lot of technology. He was one of our collaborators, and he was essentially our tech guru, so this project would not have been possible without him. And we, on the other hand, became soldering masters. Yeah. We soldered away all day long. And here we are. That's the substructure of the piece, and then we overlaid it with this goo. You can see the light glowing through.
Right. In the final iteration, at least at this point, we really, I think, succeeded in creating an intensely personal experience because you were physically interacting with the material and with the light. But also what happened was that we were creating a social experience and a shared experience, one where maybe you were playing with the material or sitting on the material while someone else was there, but also perhaps it was just the light that you were seeing or interacting with, knowing that someone had been there but not actually seeing them physically. And our vision for this piece is really that it's a complete and immersive environment, one that you enter into and are surrounded by. So if you can imagine this box is just a single component, one element that it helps to make like a complete space. That's something that we'd really like to realize at some point in the future. So in much of our work, we're interested in using technology as a tool to bring awareness back to the environment and with the spaces that you inhabit. And we hope that showing our work will encourage you to go out and notice these moments, stop and notice the moments, unexpected moments of beauty that are in the world around you every day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there a reason you didn't talk about the haptic vest, which is why we invited you here?
We did talk about the haptic
You barely
vest.
mentioned it. I was hoping you'd bring one. Is it a fully realized product?
The project was actually never completely fully realized. As far as connecting it to Facebook, we didn't actually connect it to Facebook, but we did create a remote technology that allowed for the vest to inflate and give you a hug.
Can you explain that? How would that work?
Basically, what happens is we used an IR sensor, and then we hooked it up to fans that were sitting in the back of the vest, and the vest was completely aerated through the interior. And so what happens was when something is turned on, then that inflates and gives you the hug.
Is this wireless, or do you have to be connected?
Yes, it's wireless.
It is.
It's wireless, yes.
So you don't need to go through Facebook. In theory, somebody can send you an email
Yes,
hug?
this was actually a conceptual project that was developed at MIT Media Lab, so it was not fully conceptually realized.
Is there a prototype somewhere?
There is a prototype, but we're still working, or it would actually need to be developed more with a pneumatic device in order for it to, really work the way that we would like for it to work. And we're actually, we thought about, developing it more, but we're actually we were thinking that, there are actually a lot of, there's a lot of troubleshooting that needs to happen when you're wearing electronics like outdoors. And, what happens if it starts raining and you're wearing this jacket that could give you a hug? So,
or something more.
Maybe you
We're
could
waiting, actually.
specify that people only wear it at night
yes, of course you could do that.
and indoors.
When people need
Yeah,
hugs.
yeah,
When
definitely.
people need hugs at night.
Yes. Yeah. Last question. I've also read, our research revealed that there were some people in London, England, who had developed a shirt of
Yeah,
a similar nature. Are all the haptic people in touch with each other?
I actually was in touch with somebody that was developing a haptic jacket very similar to ours, and they were interested in collaborating, but what their aim was to actually use it as a tool to work with children that were autistic and kind of help them to develop a sensitivity to that.
Now, we've never explained the term haptic to the audience.
Sure,
Can you
so
give us a
haptic technology,
definition?
basically that's using touch to kind of, basically moving past a desktop, and rather, instead of using just a screen to interface with, this is touch that you're interfacing with. So it becomes tactile.
Because in sci-fi, people have been talking about, partners, lovers, separated by great distances, wiring each other up and sending each other vibrations,
Right.
hugs, good feelings, and
Yeah.
anything else technology will permit.
Right, so I'm really interested in these kind of new social interactions that can happen
You
through
might want
technology.
to pursue that, because that's the billion-dollar idea.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Let's take our picture.
Oh, thanks.